Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Margarita remembers the day when her happy world had collapsed and shattered into pieces. That damned morning, she and her son were having breakfast in the kitchen, and everything seemed fine. Demetrio was going to school, and she was going to work. Margarita was the CEO of an engineering factory, and everyone treated her not just as a boss, but as a real queen, not only at the factory but in the entire city. Margarita always looked accordingly. She was arrogant, her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup was flawless, and she was always wearing stylish, expensive suits. Her subordinates were afraid of her harsh temper, and she never forgave mistakes and blunders. The only person in the whole world who could be forgiven for absolutely everything was her son, Demetrio, her joy, her pride, her happiness. Margarita had never been married. When she was young, she looked clumsy and silly. Not that she was ugly, but rather an ordinary, unattractive shy girl. Boys didn't notice her, preferring more attractive and bright girls. While her friends were going out on dates, having fun, and actively working on their personal lives, Margarita was working on textbooks, studying hard, and brilliantly passing all the exams. After graduating from university, the young engineer was hired at the local factory, and in just a couple of years, she was promoted from an ordinary engineer to chief engineer, then to deputy director, and then to the CEO. Obviously, at that point, men began to give her signs of attention, bring her flowers and sweets, and ask her out on a date. But Margarita saw their self-interest and greed perfectly well and only wrinkled her nose squeamishly. She was smart and fair enough to understand that she would never turn into a beauty. However, now she could afford to become at least interesting and stylish, clothes and shoes of famous brands, regular visits to beauty salons, gym. The most attractive and wealthy suitors were paying attention to her, but Margarita seemed to burn out. But actually, she'd never waited for a marvelous prince before, and she didn't believe in love. The only thing she wanted was to have a baby, and she didn't need a husband. She could bring up her child herself. She carefully picked out a candidate for the role of her future baby's father for a long time, secretly examining the personal files and medical records of the factory's employees. It was important to her that the father of her future child came from a respectable, decent family and had perfect genes. Finally, she chose Andres, the chief technology officer. The fact that the man was married didn't bother her at all. On the contrary, it guaranteed that he wouldn't bother her with silly marriage proposals. But Andres already had 2 children, a boy and a girl. Margarita already found out that his children were intelligent and talented. The boy was a regional chess champion, and the girl was a promising ballerina. It was just what she needed. She summoned Andres to her office and said bluntly, "I want to have a child with you." The man stared at her in confusion, thinking he'd misheard. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" Margarita says. "I want to have a baby with you," she said loudly and distinctly. Andres turned as red as a tomato. Margarita says, "But I'm married. I have a family, a wife." He mumbled, afraid to raise his eyes to his boss. "I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm asking you for reproduction." She firmly stopped his mumbling. "What do you mean, reproduction?" The technologist was dumbfounded. Margarita rolled her eyes. "Oh my goodness, do I have to teach you how to make children? Did your wife get pregnant by someone else, or what?" Andres looked completely confused. Margarita tried to speak more friendly, seeing that he really couldn't understand what was going on. "You know, I'm already 38 years old," she said in a calm voice. "I'm not married and I don't want to be. But I want to have a baby. You are the most suitable candidate." "But why me?" Andres pleaded. "The factory is full of other men, single men." "I know," the boss nodded calmly, "but I need you. You meet all my requirements." "Don't worry," she added calmly, "not a single person will know about it. Your wife will never know. Besides, I'll pay you good money for it." "Money?" Andres gulped convulsively. "Are you trying to buy me like a prostitute?" "Thanks, but I have enough money." No, why a prostitute? Margarita felt offended. I just want to help. I know your daughter is into ballet. I have a friend in the capital who is a member of the admissions committee of the Choreographic Academy. It's the most reputable academy in the country, and I can help your daughter to enroll there. And some extra money would not hurt. She smiled. You can take your wife abroad for a vacation, and you'll have a good time together. Believe me, Andres, my offer gives you only advantages. You won't lose anything. The technology officer hesitated, not daring to give a final answer. Don't rush, think about it until tomorrow, Margarita encouraged him. Believe me, if you agree, you won't regret it. I promise that I won't bother you ever again if everything works out. I'll raise the baby myself. She took a piece of paper and wrote a six-figure sum, then pulled the paper closer to Andres. I hope this amount will satisfy you. Andres couldn't believe his eyes. Is it a joke? Margarita says. She grinned coldly. Do I look like someone who likes to joke? Anyway, you can go, Andres. I'll be waiting for your answer tomorrow. Eventually, Andres agreed, but Margarita didn't doubt it. She was sure that money could solve any problem, it was just a matter of its amount. The couple met in a hotel, secretly arriving there separately so as not to accidentally meet any colleagues. Margarita got pregnant quite quickly after a couple of attempts. She prepared for the pregnancy very responsibly. Long before the pregnancy, she did a full checkup at the best hospital, took vitamins, and had consultations with a gynecologist. In general, she prepared herself to the fullest. When the test showed the cherished 2 stripes, Margarita even cried with emotion. Did it really work? Here's your money, Margarita said, summoning Andres the very next day. I don't need you anymore, her boss told him. Thank you for your cooperation. So you're already pregnant? Andres asked. She frowned. Yes. But from now on, show proper respect. My name is Margarita says, and I am your boss. Yes, I am pregnant, but that's none of your business anymore. You've done your job and you can leave. What do you mean, none of my business? The technologist was shocked. It's my baby too, I'm the father. When the baby is born, I would like to communicate with our baby, to participate in upbringing. Margarita squinted her eyes coldly and angrily. Andres shuddered at the icy gaze she gave him. Who do you think you are, pathetic loser? She said quietly and calmly, but ominously. Did you really think I'd let you communicate with my child? Andres kept silent, frustrated. Remember, Margarita said, and every word she said felt like a sharp nail being hammered into the lid of his coffin, you are nothing to my child, and you will always be nothing. Only the mother will be listed on the birth certificate. Don't even think about appearing in his life, announcing your existence, trying to meet and make friends, otherwise, I will destroy you and your family. Understand? The frightened Andres nodded, shocked at how angry and hostile her face had become. And if you ever talk to our colleagues about what happened between you and me, Margarita paused, I'll kick you out of the factory. And I'll make sure that you'll never find a job in this city again, except as a janitor. Do you understand me? Andres nodded gloomily. I can't hear you, do you understand? Margarita repeated. Andres shouted. Yes, I understand, I'm not stupid. You used me as a donor and threw me away when you got what you wanted, he said and turned around to leave. Wait. Margarita called out to him. You forgot your money. She handed him a thick envelope full of banknotes. Andres, after thinking for a moment, grabbed the money and ran out of the office, slamming the door. The next day, the secretary handed Margarita a letter of resignation. Andres has decided to quit. Margarita shrugged her shoulders. Do you want to quit? No problem. And she signed the document indifferently. The pregnancy was quite difficult, but Margarita was well prepared for it. She was examined by the best doctor in the city, followed all his prescriptions, ate the right food, took vitamins, took long walks to get some fresh air, and did special exercises for pregnant women. A couple of times she had to stay in the hospital, just in case, but not for long. When some inexperienced silly nurse in the hospital said that Margarita was too old for pregnancy, she looked at the nurse with such a deadly look that the poor girl almost turned gray with fear and from then on always kept her mouth shut. Finally, the ultrasound showed the sex of the baby, a boy, and Margarita smiled with satisfaction. She already knew she was having a boy, she felt it with all her heart. Soon the whole factory found out about her pregnancy. Her subordinates were gossiping. They couldn't believe the evil witch had gotten pregnant and wondered who could be the baby's father. They hoped that maybe a child would make her a little more kind. Margarita, not wanting to know anything about this gossip, appointed her deputy to perform her duties temporarily and went on maternity leave with a clear conscience. The labor was hard and lasted almost 24 hours. Margarita was in pain, but she endured it, remembering that all these sufferings were just a price for meeting her son. Finally, she heard the first cry of the newborn baby, and then the doctor put him on her chest, saying, "Look, what a beautiful baby boy." She finally couldn't stand it and burst into tears with exhaustion, relief, and happiness. The baby looked at her with cloudy baby eyes, and it was not clear whether he could see her or not. But still he was so cute that it took Margarita's breath away. Did she really finally become a mother? "Demetrio," she whispered softly, admiring her son, "my sweet baby." Margarita raised her son to be a true prince. Yes, she certainly spoiled him, but she also brought him up as a true aristocrat. Demetrio grew up reading classical literature and listening to classical music, visiting museums, opera and ballet, and famous performances with his mother. When he was a little older, he began to attend all kinds of clubs, which were supposed to develop his intellect and instill a taste for art. Sometimes, reading a book, the boy looked longingly out of the window. There, in the yard, on the playground, other children of his age were playing happily. They were riding on the slide and on swings, climbing on colorful ladders, riding bikes, playing with a ball, pulling up on the bars, noisily quarreling, and no less noisily reconciled. He wanted to go to them so much. Hal wanted to give up all these boring classes, chess, drawing, music school, swimming. He wanted to be free. Of course, these dreams never came true. Demetrio already knew from his own sad experience, his mother was against his communication with other children, especially with those children from the neighborhood. He didn't even go to kindergarten. His mother hired a nanny, who took the boy for long walks along the boulevard, read books to him, and forced him to learn poems and foreign languages. One day he mentioned that he would like to have real friends because he was lonely. His mother raised her eyebrows in puzzlement. "Lonely? Demetrio, honey, what are you talking about? You have me, I will never leave you. I love you very much." It was as if she didn't realize that her son was talking about something else. Demetrio had high hopes for school. Soon he would be going to the first grade. But even there, relations with his friends did not go well. The children intuitively avoided him. He was too perfect, too decent, and nice for their noisy, playful company. Classmates laughed at the fact that Demetrio was so squeamish that he never even ate lunch in the school cafeteria with everyone else. His mother didn't like the school kitchen and gave him homemade lunches in plastic boxes. Of course, this immediately set him apart from the company. Demetrio wanted to go to the cafeteria with everyone else and eat soup and mashed potatoes with sausage, but he could not disobey his mother and obediently ate whatever she gave him. The fact that he could read, count, and write better than anyone else made the other kids even more angry towards him. And when they found out that he was learning to play the violin at the music school, they made fun of him. A boy with a violin is a disgrace. Isn't he ashamed of himself? Once Demetrio tried to start a conversation with the guys about classical music, but no one supported him. Demetrio's classmates thought he was too much of a show-off and began to ignore him. Demetrio was used to hiding his real feelings and emotions and didn't show anyone how much he was suffering, but of course, he was very, very sad. Of course, no one openly bullied him. After all, the authority of his mother in the city played an important role. Even the children understood that it was impossible to offend the son of Margarita says. But this didn't prevent them from regularly laughing at Demetrio. Since the 5th grade, he got a nickname Rich Kid. At that age, the children already had an understanding of each other's or parents' social statuses. They understood how much their classmates' clothes cost and who had the most expensive gadgets. In this regard, Demetrio was different from everyone else with branded clothes, an expensive smartphone, and other trendy gadgets. Every morning a personal driver took him to school in a fancy car. But Demetrio could tolerate the nickname Rich Demetrio. Much worse was the fact that some kids tried to make friends with him solely because of his status. He'd never had any real friends. And being friends with people who were just using you was disgusting. At first, he was so naive, he believed in sudden sincere friendship and was very happy when one of his classmates suggested, "Hey, Rich Kid, I guess you have some money, why don't you buy everyone a drink and some snacks after school? After all, we're friends." Demetrio was embarrassed by such a suggestion and asked, "What should I buy?" "Well, chocolates, gum, chips, juice, we'll show you," the classmate nodded graciously. "So, deal? We'll wait for you after school, right?" "Deal." Demetrio nodded, proud of the mission he's been entrusted with. "Everyone, after school, we're all going out." The boys and girls rejoiced. The rich kid is paying for everything. He really did have money, his mother gave him enough pocket money. Besides, he had his own bank card for unexpected expenses, and he always had a decent amount of money on it. Margarita was sure that her son wouldn't spend it on something bad, like cigarettes. She trusted him. Demetrio eagerly waited for the end of the lessons. It was hard for him to sit still with impatience. Finally, when the bell rang, he jumped up from his desk and shouted, "Everyone, let's go to the store. Let's have fun." The math teacher shook her head reproachfully. Says, "Actually the bell is ringing for the teacher, not for the students. I haven't said the lesson is over yet." "Maria Fernanda," pleased the classmates whimpered, "it's the last lesson." "Okay," the math teacher sighed, "you can go." When Demetrio and his classmates left the school, someone suddenly said mockingly, "Actually, the grocery store is no big deal. I can buy chips and chocolate bars myself if I need to." Demetrio was confused. "What then?" "You know what, Rich Kid," the classmate got excited, "invite all of us to a cafe or a pizzeria. That would be the deed of a real friend." One of his classmates either admired or was shocked at the same time. "Marcelo, you're so brazen." "Why?" He looked around his friends with a triumphant gaze. "That will prove that he is a normal guy and not a jerk." "I'm not a jerk," Demetrio shouted loudly. "I'm inviting everyone to the cafe," and looked around, trying to see if there were any cafes nearby. "Yay!" the classmates exclaimed. They immediately started arguing about where exactly they should go. "Burger Hut," one of them shouted. "Pizzeria," others insisted. "An ice cream cafe," the girls argued, "or a French cafe." The boys even had to cast lots. Eventually, they decided to go to a popular cafe that served salads and desserts in addition to coffee and other drinks. When this noisy crowd entered the cafe, the waiters looked at them with some confusion. "Guys," the waiter said cautiously, "just in case, I should warn you, it's quite an expensive place. Will you have enough money to pay?" "Of course," the classmates replied happily. "Our friend is paying for us today." They had to move several tables together. The waitress brought the menu, and they started greedily picking out the most expensive treats. "Wow, I want a vanilla cappuccino." Or "No, I'd rather have an orange latte." "Ooh, girls, there's also berry smoothies and milkshakes. And ice cream. I want this fruit cake. I'll have the Caesar salad and the ham and cheese pancakes. And I want cherry pie. I want this. And I." And we. Their laughter and noise made people's ears pop. The other customers of the cafe glanced at the restless kids with displeasure, but no one complained because, after all, they were the same customers. Demetrio was sitting there neither dead nor alive. The suggestion to go to the cafe instead of the store shocked and frightened him, and he couldn't think of a suitable excuse in time. He had enough money for a modest treat for his classmates, but he didn't expect that he would have to feed a crowd of 28 people. Moreover, the guys were not shy and ordered a lot of food. Everyone was hungry. The waitress began to bring them their orders, and the classmates started eating greedily. They ate, praised, and generally felt quite happy. Only Demetrio was very nervous, trying to calculate whether there was enough money on his card to pay for it. "Rich kid, why aren't you eating anything?" Marcelo, the organizer of the feast, clapped Demetrio on the shoulder. "I'm not hungry," he mumbled. His appetite really disappeared out of fear. They spent there about 2 hours. When they finished one plate, they immediately ordered another, then another, and another. Demetrio didn't even try to make a calm face anymore. He was in a real panic. Finally, the boys and girls had eaten enough and leaned back in their chairs. Some of them even began to hiccup. "Good job, rich kid," Marcelo said. "You've pleased everyone. Man, now we know you keep your word." But Demetrio wasn't happy, even with this praise. Then one of the girls looked at the clock and gasped. "Oh, it's almost 5 o'clock. I have gymnastics." Everyone got up. Some had training and workshops in the evening, some had to come back home soon, and also no one canceled their homework. Everyone got up from the table and headed for the exit. "Rich kid, let's go," someone called Demetrio. A worried waitress immediately appeared near the table. "Where are you going? Who's going to pay?" Marcelo nodded nonchalantly toward Demetrio. "He pays for everything." The waitress looked questioningly at the frightened boy. "You?" she asked suspiciously. Demetrio had no choice but to nod. "Guys, you can go," he said, addressing his classmates. "Don't wait for me. I'll pay." The most offensive thing was that no one wanted to wait for him. Not everyone even said goodbye to him. "Well, bye, thanks for the meal." Most of them didn't even say thank you. Finally, when he was alone at the table, Demetrio timidly handed the waitress his card. "Would you please check, is there enough money there?" She frowned but still pulled out a POS machine. The machine beeped and displayed an error, insufficient funds. The waitress frowned even more. She didn't like this whole situation. "Well, what should I do with you?" she asked unhappily. "Should I take you to the boss, call your parents, or report to the school that their student is having such fun, treating all his friends, and then trying to get away without paying?" Demetrio was so outraged that all the blood rushed to his face. "I wasn't trying to get away. I don't refuse to pay," he exclaimed. "How, if you don't have enough money on your card?" The waitress was almost crying herself. "I'm in trouble now. You have no idea what kind of fine I'll have to pay. Maybe they'll even fire me." "I'll call my mom now, she'll pay," Demetrio said gloomily. "Oh, I feel sorry for your mom." The waitress shook her head disapprovingly. "It's probably 1.5 of her salary." Demetrio did not specify that his mother had enough money. It was embarrassing to talk about his wealth in such a situation. The mother answered after a couple of beeps in a slightly irritated tone. "Demetrio, do you have something urgent?" "I have an important meeting." He sighed heavily. "Yes, Mom, it's urgent, very urgent." Margarita arrived 20 minutes later. She didn't understand much of her son's confused story on the phone. "I need money, a lot of money, to pay for my classmates' drinks and food." But she understood the main thing. Her boy was in trouble. Entering the cafe, she immediately saw her son. He was sitting on a chair in a corner, slouching, miserable, and frightened. 2 guards were standing next to him to make sure he didn't run away. "What's going on here?" she shouted nervously. You should educate your son a little better, lady, one of the guards said sternly, because, he ordered a lot of food, knowing that he had no money. I didn't ask you how I should educate my own child, Margarita said angrily. But then the meaning of what was said finally came to her. What? She gasped. How much? Son, is it true? Demetrio turned red and nodded in shame. I just wanted to treat my friends. Margarita went to the manager of the cafe and gave him the money, saying unhappily, Why did you even bring them all that food and drinks? Don't you understand that 12-year-old kids can't have that much money? Then she and Demetrio drove home in silence. The mother was looking carefully at the road, frowning and whispering something silently. Demetrio looked at her but didn't dare to say a word. He felt terribly ashamed that he had let her down so badly. At home she asked him if he would have dinner. She didn't scold him, didn't rebuke him. This made Demetrio feel even worse, and even though he was starving, for he didn't eat anything at the cafe, he couldn't sit at the table and eat dinner as if nothing had happened. He broke into tears. Mommy, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. An upset Margarita cradled him and stroked his messy hair. I just wanted to find friends, Demetrio said through his tears. His mother said admonishingly, Remember, Demetrio, you can't buy friends, they will never really respect you anyway. You have to make them respect you and want to communicate with you. He looked at her with eyes full of tears. But how can I do that, Mom? Margarita didn't really know. She didn't have any friends either. She devoted herself to her son and her work. You'll know when you grow up, she said evasively. The conflict was resolved, and Demetrio finally decided to eat. The next morning, the impudent Marcelo again came to him at school and asked him brazenly, So, buddy, where are you inviting us today? Maybe to a pizzeria or a barbecue place? Demetrio grinned, looking him calmly in the eyes. You're treating everyone today, he said confidently. It's fair. Yesterday I paid for everyone, now it's your turn. Marcelo immediately frowned and called him a greedy and stingy person. None of his classmates mentioned that the rich kid should pay for everyone again, and they stopped mocking him. However, no one ever tried to be friends with him either. In the last year of school, a miracle happened. A new girl joined them. By this time, Demetrio was already considered as, well, not an outcast, but rather an arrogant, self-sufficient guy. His classmates thought that he avoided them, thinking that he was better than all of them. They had forgotten how desperately the boy had tried to be friends with them a few years ago. And that story at the cafe was also forgotten long ago. He kept himself apart from everyone else. He didn't ignore them, but he never joined them in the conversations and never had fun together with them. They never invited him to the parties when all the students got together at someone's house. But the teachers couldn't stop praising him. What a smart boy, genius. He had excellent results in all subjects. Everyone knew that after graduation, Demetrio says would not stay in their city, but would go to the capital to study. Besides, his mother, who was still the CEO of the factory and was still considered as local queen, helped the school from time to time with new computers, TV sets for the principal's office, and sports equipment for the gym. None of his classmates called Demetrio rich kid anymore. For everyone he was just says, sometimes they called him Prince because he was the son of the local queen. And so, at the beginning of the new school year, during a lesson, the door opened and a girl peeked into the classroom. You should knock before entering, the teacher said sternly. The girl was embarrassed. I'm sorry, I wanted to. I was just in a hurry. The bell rang. I was in the principal's office. May I come in? She spoke shyly and confusingly. Are you Martinez, the new girl? The teacher squinted at her. Yes, she nodded. Everyone immediately perked up. The new girl, it's something interesting. The girls looked at her meticulously, assessing her appearance and wondering if she was a threat to the most beautiful and popular girls. The boys also evaluated her appearance, but in a different way. She's nice, Marcelo said loudly, and her body is yummy, curvy, both front and back. The new girl blushed to the roots of her hair. The class laughed. Demetrio involuntarily clenched his fists with rage. The teacher pretended not to hear the vulgar comment and tapped her pen on her desk. Quiet, the lesson is not over. Come in, Martinez, she nodded to the new girl. Sit down. The girl looked around the classroom. Almost all the desks were occupied, only Demetrio was sitting alone. She was embarrassed, but she had no choice anyway. The new girl walked toward the desk between the rows, trying to ignore the mocking comments from all sides. Says, you're lucky. A lovely doll will be sitting next to you. May I? The girl asked timidly with only her lips, stopping near Demetrio's desk. His mouth was so dry from excitement that he just nodded silently and moved back a little so as not to sit too closely. The new girl sat down, and Demetrio could smell the fresh, unobtrusive scent of her perfume, very delicate, barely detectable. He lowered his head in embarrassment. The scent seemed unexpectedly exciting. It made his blood boil. What's your name? The girl whispered. Demetrio, he answered. I'm Norma, the girl said. Norma. That gentle, sweet name suited her blue eyes, her sweet, innocent smile, and her golden hair. Demetrio, I'm sorry I violated your privacy like that, she whispered guiltily, but there were really no empty seats. It's all right, he mumbled, cursing himself for his embarrassment. His face turned red, and his hands trembled. He didn't know how to communicate with the opposite sex. He wished he could be bold and confident now, make funny jokes, and impress her. But now Norma would probably think he was just a fool who couldn't say anything at all. For the first time ever, he wanted to impress a girl but had no idea how to behave. Demetrio mentally cursed himself until the end of the lesson. He was really desperate to please her, probably because he liked her at first sight. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only one who liked the pretty girl. The restless Marcelo, having waited until the end of the lesson, immediately approached Norma and began to shower her with compliments. You have very beautiful eyes. And your smile makes me tipsy. And other cheap compliments. Demetrio was angry, watching this scene, but he couldn't do anything about it. His greatest fear was that Norma would fall in love with Marcelo, listening to his sweet talk, like most of the girls at school. He was considered the most popular guy at school. He was tall, handsome, stylish, and he was an athlete. In physical education lessons, all the girls only looked at him. Marcelo shamelessly used his popularity, dating many girls. None of his romances lasted long. But what is surprising, the reputation of Casanova made him even more popular among the girls. And now, it seemed that he liked the new girl. For some reason, Demetrio didn't want Norma to fall for this fake charisma. Fortunately, so far the new girl had behaved restrainedly, she didn't smile, and she accepted Marcelo's compliments without much enthusiasm. But such resistance only emboldened Marcelo. Now he clearly wasn't going to give up and set a goal to conquer the girl. One day Demetrio accidentally overheard a conversation between Marcelo and other boys in the locker room after physical education. You're like a wolf, you smell fresh meat. Someone said jokingly. Marcelo chuckled playfully. I like this girl. But I'm afraid she is not interested in you, someone teased him. Not interested in me? Marcelo was offended. There is no girl on this planet who would say no to me. I think this girl will be the first to tell you no. You want to bet? Marcelo immediately asked. Why not? How much? Well, let's make it 1,000. Only one? Marcelo said disdainfully, let's make it 5,000. 5? His opponent was confused. Marcelo laughed. Are you afraid of losing? Well, okay, his classmate mumbled reluctantly, let's make it 5. Demetrio couldn't take it anymore. Norma is not a toy, so stop this circus, he said softly but firmly. The boys didn't even immediately understand what he said. Says, someone asked in surprise, "What are you talking about?" I said, Demetrio repeated, "I won't let you do that to Norma." Marcelo laughed defiantly. "Oh, look at him, he won't let us." "Who do you think you are? Brother, friend, lifeguard?" "I am." Demetrio swallowed nervously and suddenly said, "I'm her boyfriend." There was an oppressive silence in the locker room for a few moments. "What?" someone finally asked. "Is this a joke or something?" Demetrio shook his head. "It's not a joke. We're dating. And if you're a normal guy," he turned his gaze to Marcelo, "you're not gonna get in our way. You know that a real man wouldn't do that." Marcelo crossed his arms over his chest, desperately trying to figure out what to say. Of course, he knew the laws of man's honor, and he didn't want to look like a jerk, but it was too hard to believe that this neat, shy boy was telling the truth. "When did you become her boyfriend?" Marcelo asked, squinting suspiciously. "A long time ago," Demetrio lied confidently. "We met a long time ago. That's why she transferred to our school, to be closer to me." "Then why do you act like strangers?" Marcelo asked incredulously. "You don't kiss, don't even hold hands. We don't show our relationship in public. The etiquette rules don't allow it," Demetrio said, shrugging his shoulders. "School is not the right place for kisses." It worked surprisingly well. Demetrio was surprised that he could lie so effortlessly. Marcelo kept staring at him with a questioning gaze. "I hope you understand," he finally said, "that I can easily check it. I'll find Martinez right away and ask her if you're really her boyfriend." Demetrio felt he was one step away from failure, but there was no turning back. He continued to lie confidently. "Sure, go and ask her." "Come on, guys," Marcelo said unhappily. "Somebody, go to the girls' locker room and call Martinez." Demetrio's heart raced, and his lips were dry, but he tried not to think about what would happen after Marcelo found out the truth. He tried to impress Norma, but now he's gonna embarrass himself in front of her, idiot. The new girl was waiting for them in the hallway. She greeted the delegation from the boys' locker room cautiously, wrapping her arms around her shoulders as if to shield herself from prying eyes. Demetrio looked at her long, slender legs and the short shorts and swallowed noisily. She was so beautiful. The moment of his failure was coming. "Listen, Martinez," Marcelo said lazily, told us that you're allegedly dating him. Is he lying or is he telling the truth?" Norma opened her eyes wide and stared at Demetrio. Despite the absurdity and hopelessness of the situation, that look made his chest ache. "So," Marcelo said hurriedly, "did you lie, rich boy?" Norma shook her head slowly. "And no. No," she said more confidently, "Demetrio told the truth. He's my boyfriend, yes, and I'm his girlfriend, that's right." All the boys were very surprised. They looked at Demetrio with their mouths open. But Demetrio was even more surprised than Marcelo. He didn't expect Norma to play this ridiculous game and rescue him. "Well," Marcelo shifted his gaze from her to Demetrio and back again, "then it's okay, I didn't know. I won't try to flirt and woo you, I'm not a bastard." Demetrio breathed a sigh of relief. It worked. Norma was so clever, she immediately understood everything and rescued him. And then something incredible happened. Norma approached Demetrio, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him on the cheek. "Are we going home together after school, like we always do?" She murmured in his ear loud enough so that the others could hear. If anyone still had any doubts about them, this scene eliminated all doubts. "Yes, sure," Demetrio said hastily. He felt dizzy because she was so close. He felt the scent of her perfume and her warmth. They really did go together after school. Demetrio called the driver and told him that he didn't need to pick him up today. He wanted to go for a walk. "Can I walk you home?" he asked timidly. Okay, Norma looked back at the school porch, where their classmates were still hanging out, and took Demetrio's hand in front of them. "Let's go." Their intertwined fingers excited Demetrio, and he couldn't say a word, only nodded and mumbled something unintelligible in response to her questions. They turned the corner, and then, to his great disappointment, Norma finally let go of his hand. They silently continued to walk side by side, shoulder to shoulder, but there was a clear awkwardness between them. Finally, Demetrio was the first to break the silence. "Why did you say I was your boyfriend?" he asked. "No, I mean, you did the right thing," he corrected himself, "otherwise Marcelo wouldn't leave you alone." "But how did you understand what was going on?" Norma shrugged. "I don't know. I guess I intuitively sensed that you made up the story about our relationship not out of bravado, but for some good reason. Besides, I don't like Marcelo," she said, her lips curling squeamishly. "I'd say anything to piss him off." "Thank you," Demetrio smiled. "Why did you make that up?" she asked. Demetrio gloomed. "The guys bet 5,000 on you that you wouldn't say no to Marcelo," he said awkwardly. Norma splashed her hands with indignation. "Bastards! That's why I had to interfere," Demetrio explained, "and lie that you were my girlfriend." "So I should thank you." Norma looked at him gratefully. Demetrio was relieved. He thought she would be mad at him. "I also told them that you transferred to our school to be closer to me," he confessed in embarrassment. Norma replied sadly, "Actually, my family moved to another apartment. My previous school is too far." "Your family moved? That's great," he said awkwardly, but Norma bit her lip and became sad. Dad lost his job at the factory. He'd worked there for years as a machine operator. Mom is not working now either. She's on maternity leave. We had big problems with money, so we had to sell our spacious apartment downtown and move into this small apartment. Recently, my dad got a job again, but only as a security guard in a store. He would never be hired back at the factory again. We can't even dream about it. The CEO at the factory is such a bitch." Demetrio felt an unpleasant pain in his stomach. "What factory is it? The machine building factory?" he asked quickly. "Yes," Norma nodded. Demetrio shrank back. So she was talking about his mother. "Why was he fired?" he asked cautiously. Norma clenched her fists indignantly, her eyes flashing furiously. "Allegedly he was drunk. Can you imagine?" "He wasn't drunk. My father doesn't drink alcohol at all. One of his subordinates really came to work drunk, and my dad scolded him. And that asshole reported, saying that my dad was the one who was drunk. And the CEO didn't even bother to find out the truth. That bitch fired my father right away." Demetrio fell silent. What if Norma found out that he was the son of that bitch? Apparently, she hadn't realized it yet. Probably she thought he and the CEO just had the same last name. "Why are you so sad?" Norma smiled at him so gently that it took his breath away. "Don't be sad. Things are more or less normal in our family now. But living in a one-bedroom apartment is hell." She rolled her eyes. "There are 3 of us now, and soon there will be 4. My mom is 8 months pregnant." In the meantime, they approached an old 5-story building, and Norma stopped. "Here we are," she said, and looked for the windows of her apartment. "This is where I live. Do you see the corner window on the 3rd floor? That's where I live. Thanks for walking me home." "You're welcome," Demetrio muttered. "It was my pleasure. Do you want to know a secret?" Norma decided to confess. He looked at her intrigued. "Go ahead." "I liked you right away, at first sight." She blushed. "So when Marcelo asked me if you were my boyfriend, it made me feel so good. Even though it wasn't for real, it still felt good, because I really like you." She lowered her head. Demetrio dared to touch her cheek gently with the palm of his hand, forcing her to raise her eyes. "I like you, too," he said softly. So Margarita's happy world collapsed that very day when her son Demetrio told her a little embarrassedly, "Mom, I met a girl, Norma," and the way he said it left no doubt her boy had fallen in love. Margarita felt a sudden attack of jealousy. The thought that Demetrio's heart had been captured by some vulgar girl was painful and unpleasant. "Who is that girl?" she asked, pretending to be calm. She is very nice, Demetrio blushed with embarrassment. She is so beautiful. It's clear that she's beautiful if you have a crush on her, his mother teased him jokingly. I mean, what do you know about her family? Are they decent people? What do her parents do for a living? Demetrio was embarrassed. Her father, I think, is a foreman, he was, and her mother is on maternity leave. I see, his mother said diplomatically, but it was obvious that she was not happy about this information. Demetrio, my dear, you'll have a million more girls like that. He felt as if someone poured boiling water on him. What are you talking about, Mom? What a million? I need only Norma, she's the best. This is the first time I've ever felt something like this. First love is good because it is the first. Fortunately, it's not the last, his mother said judiciously. Our relationship is serious, Demetrio assured her sincerely, and his mother only shrugged diplomatically. We'll see. The next morning, when he met Norma at school, Demetrio learned that her parents weren't happy about the news that she was dating a boy either. Dad was mad, she said with a nervous chuckle. When he found out that your last name was Says, his face changed. He yelled, "Oh, so he's the son of that damn bitch who kicked me out of the factory. Can you believe it? He's paranoid. Like there can be no other Says in the world." But then Norma caught Demetrio's serious gaze and went silent. Or he is not paranoid. Demetrio, why are you silent? Tell me your mom is not the CEO of the factory. She said quietly. Are the same last names a coincidence? There was no point in lying. Demetrio shook his head slowly and painfully. Not a coincidence. Norma gasped and turned pale. So your mother? Yes, he nodded bitterly, she was the one who fired your father. He thought Norma was going to curse him, cry, or scream, but she continued to stare at him silently, eyes widened with horror, not saying a word. I'm sorry, was all he could whisper. I had nothing to do with that situation with your father, I hope you realize that. I'm not responsible for my mother's actions. Damn it, I don't even know what's going on at her factory. But you knew who I was talking about when I told you about my father. You knew your mother had kicked my dad out of the factory. You knew, and you didn't say a word. Norma said accusingly. Why did you hide it from me? He opened his eyes wide and exclaimed. Because I like you very much. That's the reason I didn't say anything. That's the only reason? Norma squinted incredulously. Well, yes, I'm aware that your family hates mine. I was afraid you just wouldn't want to communicate with me after you knew who I was. Norma remained silent for a long time, biting her lips. Demetrio waited for her verdict breathlessly. Finally, Norma turned to him and smiled shyly. Yes, you're probably right. If I had known who your mother was, I wouldn't even have sat at the same desk with you. But now it's too late. Too late? He interrupted. Yes, she smiled shyly. I like you too much to give you up so easily. Demetrio blossomed with a happy smile in return. Really, do you still like me? Even more than before, she confessed. Eventually, Demetrio and Norma decided that it was no big deal that her father considered his mother his enemy. It's not the children's fault, they have nothing to do with this adult fight. Both Demetrio and Norma were sure that no one would ultimately be against their relationship. However, they were wrong. Margarita noticed with concern that her boy was drowning in his first love more and more. He was only talking about Norma. Norma this, Norma that. You should invite Norma to dinner, his mother suggested, clenching her teeth. I'd like to see what kind of girl she is. Demetrio was embarrassed. She's shy. And besides, you will probably make a real challenge for her, I know you. What are your hobbies? How are you studying? What college are you planning to go to? Who are your parents? How much do they earn? Margarita pursed her thin lips together. But these are really important questions. I realize you're not interested in anything but kisses right now. But I'd like to know what kind of person Norma is. She's a good person, Demetrio muttered, like everyone else. Well, all right. Where is she going to go after high school? She's going to go to a pedagogical university in our city, Demetrio said. Margarita took a breath of relief. Well, that's good. She will stay here, you will go to the capital, and you'll be finally separated. Demetrio pulled himself together and said, Mom, well, I was going to tell you a long time ago. What? She immediately got nervous. I probably won't go to the capital, Demetrio said. Margarita frowned. What do you mean? 5 years of separation from Norma is very hard. Norma and I decided that I wouldn't go to the capital. There are enough good colleges in our city, I'll study here. After his speech, there was a wild scandal. Margarita raced around the room and shook her hands indignantly. Do you hear what you're saying? You are smart, you are talented. Do you want to be stuck in this swamp forever? Norma is drowning you with her. You'll easily get into the best university in the country. Brilliant career is ahead of you. Mom, this is what you want, not me. Demetrio said irritably. You only think about your parental ambitions. Have you ever wondered what I want? I didn't live before I met Norma, I existed. And now I can't live without her. She's the meaning of my life. He said desperately. Yeah, she's smarter than I thought. She chose a rich guy with a brilliant future, his mother grinned bitterly. Demetrio turned red. Don't you dare talk about her that way. You don't know her at all. Margarita shook her head. I don't know her personally, but I know very well the nature of people like her. A girl from a simple poor family, with no education, no status, and no manners. All she dreams of is marrying a rich guy who will guarantee her a beautiful life. Stop it! Demetrio shouted. Norma is not like that. She loves me. Did she tell you that? She'll tell you anything to get what she wants. Margarita took a sedative. Son, you stabbed me without a knife today. You will never study in this city. You're going to the capital. This conversation is over. Are you going to tie me up and send me there in a suitcase? Demetrio laughed evilly. Margarita shook her head. If I have to, I'll tie you up and send you there. You don't know what I'm capable of. Demetrio got angry and ran out of the house, slamming the door. His mother stayed there for a while, shocked, swaying back and forth in her chair in confusion. Finally, she came to her senses, took the phone, dialed some number, and said into the receiver, Paolo, I need your help. I need to get some compromising photos of a girl. And if there aren't any compromising ones, I need you to make them, she added. Yes, right, you can use any means, I don't care about the price. The prom was coming up. Demetrio had excellent grades, but he didn't care much about them. All he could think about was Norma. She looked so beautiful in her soft blue long dress. The best. Her parents couldn't attend the prom. Her mother and Norma's little sister, who was not even a year old, went to her grandmother's house in the country for a few days, and her father had a shift at work. Frankly, Demetrio was happy about it. He wasn't ready to meet Norma's parents face to face and listen to their reproaches towards his mother. Norma's parents had never accepted the fact that their daughter was dating the son of an enemy because her son was also an enemy. Demetrio's mother, on the other hand, came glowing, clapping him proudly as he went up on stage to get his award. She looked at Norma with such anger and fury that the girl felt as if someone poured cold water on her. I don't think your mom likes me, Norma whispered sadly. But Demetrio only laughed carelessly and took her cool fingers in his big, hot palm. Don't worry, she'll like you. She'll have to accept the idea that you're my future wife. Norma blushed, pleased and embarrassed to the point of tears. Are you really going to marry me? She whispered in a happy voice. Demetrio nodded and touched her cheek with his lips. Yes. They escaped from the prom a little earlier than the rest of the students and took a long walk through the deserted city streets. both beautiful, radiant, already grown up, on the threshold of independent life. When the sun came up, Demetrio walked Norma home. They kissed for a long time, standing in front of her entrance, unable to tear themselves away from each other. "Would you like to come in?" Norma nodded timidly at the windows of her apartment. "No one's home anyway. Dad's at work and won't be home until the evening, and Mom and my sister will arrive from the village the day after tomorrow." Demetrio swallowed nervously. He realized that this was not a simple invitation for coffee. "Are you sure?" he asked, realizing that he didn't want to leave. Norma looked bravely into his eyes. "We're getting married anyway, so who cares whether it happens sooner or later?" He came home only at lunchtime. His worried mother attacked him from the doorstep with accusations. "Demetrio, where have you been? You don't think about me at all. I almost went crazy. I called all the morgues and hospitals. Why is your phone off?" Demetrio replied, absolutely drunk with love. "The battery is dead, I guess. Mom, we were taking a walk after the party. All the students came home in the morning." The mother yelled. "And you were walking somewhere until noon with this vulgar." "Shut up." Demetrio sharply interrupted his mother. "Don't you dare. I will not allow you to insult my girl, my future wife." "Wife?" Margarita laughed a strange, hysterical laugh. "I wonder how many other guys call her their girlfriend." "Well, you're certainly not her only fool." "What are you talking about?" he exclaimed, turning pale. "You're out of your mind. You're crazy because you're blinded by your love and can't see the truth," Margarita said, holding out an envelope to him. "What is it?" he asked in confusion. "Open it. The pictures are very interesting. You'll like them," his mother grinned. Demetrio opened the envelope, feeling a chill in his fingers and chest, and sensing a bad feeling. Taking out the first picture, he looked at it and felt nauseous. His Norma was kissing some strange man for some reason. He pulled out a second picture. It was Norma too, and again she was kissing someone else. In the next picture, she was with a third man. "Are you convinced?" his mother asked mockingly, looking at him almost sympathetically. "I told you that Norma is a very clever girl, but she doesn't love you. She's just looking for the best deal." Demetrio didn't want to believe it, he couldn't, but the pictures. They showed everything very clearly. He was so confused that he didn't even think to ask where his mother had gotten the pictures. He was shocked by what he saw. Norma didn't know what to think. After what had happened between her and Demetrio, he disappeared. He blocked her everywhere and deleted her from his friends on social media. It wasn't like him at all. Norma didn't want to think about it, but was Demetrio a classic scoundrel, lying about love, proposing marriage, just to get a girl into bed? She refused to believe it. After waiting a few days, she couldn't stand it and went to his house. The territory where their house was located was closed. She pressed the intercom button for a long time, but no one answered. Finally, some woman came out of the gate, and Norma wanted to sneak in. Unfortunately, the woman was curious and vigilant. "Who are you here to see, dearie?" She stopped Norma. "I'm here to see says." "They're not here." "They're both not here," she said. "Where are they?" Norma was confused. "They went to the capital." "To the capital?" Norma was shocked. Yes, her son went to the university, and his mother went there to help him find a place to live, to rent an apartment. The woman said something else, but Norma couldn't hear her anymore. She mumbled, "Thank you," and walked away. Margarita was overjoyed. Everything had turned out exactly as she had planned. Demetrio was a university student, he had forgotten about his girlfriend, and he had a bright future ahead of him. And when he graduated, she would find him a good bride, a decent girl from a decent family, maybe some professor's daughter. The doorbell made her shudder. Margarita didn't like unexpected guests. She grudgingly went to the hallway and opened the door. Norma stood on the doorstep. "What do you want?" Margarita asked coldly, not even trying to be polite. The girl didn't look good, pale, skinny, with dark circles under her eyes. Margarita wrinkled her nose in disgust. Her son fell in love with this ugly girl. Was he blind? I'm sorry, Norma whispered, I just don't have anyone else to turn to for help. Help? Margarita raised one eyebrow. What are you talking about? Why on earth would I help you? The thing is, I'm pregnant, Norma breathed out. Margarita felt her heart race. What a cunning plan. What does that have to do with me? Margarita asked coldly, pulling herself together. My father kicked me out of the house, the girl said confusedly. He hates you and Demetrio, your whole family. He said he doesn't want to hear anything about the baby. But it's your grandson or granddaughter, she added in despair. Margarita says lips turned into a thin line. You're so cunning. But I'm not blind, I immediately recognized your cunning plan. I don't know who got you pregnant, so get out of here, slut. Norma opened her mouth in shock. What are you talking about? It's Demetrio's baby, I've never had anyone else but Demetrio. Margarita mockingly laughed. You can lie as much as you want, but I'm not stupid. This baby is not my son's. Your plan has failed, darling. You'll never get Demetrio. The pale Norma was shivering violently. What am I going to do? I have nowhere to go, she mumbled in fear, tears rolling down her cheeks. Margarita shrugged imperiously. The only thing I can do to help you is to give you money for an abortion. Norma shook her head, looking at her as if she were some monster, and then walked away without a word. 10 years had passed. Margarita says, hunched over and leaning on her cane, walked slowly down the street. She was 67, but looked like a 100-year-old granny. Her head was shaking, her hands trembling. Grief had broken her. 5 years ago her only son Demetrio had died. He had been drinking heavily, and his heart failed. He seemed to have had a great life. Great job, prosperity, and a beautiful wife, but still his eyes were always unhappy. Margarita didn't want to believe it, but she knew that her son couldn't forget Norma, his first love. As the years passed, Margarita began to feel guilty about what she had done. Wishing a better future for her boy, she slipped Demetrio fake photos of the girl. Of course, Norma wasn't kissing any of those men in the pictures, it was just professional Photoshop. Margarita had to pay a lot of money for those photos. She asked herself whether she did the right thing. Well, maybe Demetrio wouldn't have made a brilliant career in their city, but he could have married his girlfriend, be happy, and, most importantly, alive. After his death, Margarita lost the meaning of her life. She quit the factory and completely immersed herself in her grief. Demetrio and his wife had no children, so there was no one to comfort her tormented old heart. Margarita turned down the boulevard. A boy on a bicycle raced toward her. When the old woman looked at his face, she froze. She thought she saw a ghost. This boy looked like her son Demetrio, the same big gray eyes, long eyelashes, the same brown hair, the same smile with a dimple on his cheek. Demetrio, a male voice sounded nearby. Come here, we have to go home, or your mother will scold us. Grandpa, please, the boy said in Demetrio's voice. Margarita felt like she was going crazy. Can I ride for half an hour more? She felt her legs grow weak and shaky and her eyes darken. The last thing she heard through the growing noise in her ears was, "Excuse me, are you okay?" Margarita regained consciousness in an unfamiliar apartment. "Are you awake?" She heard a voice nearby, looked up, and almost fainted again. Norma was standing right in front of her, the same Norma, Demetrio's first and only love. 10 years had passed, but the girl hadn't changed much. She was still as delicate and fragile as before. However, there was no more frightened expression and insecurity in her eyes. She looked quite self-sufficient and happy. "Norma, is that woman okay?" A man's voice asked, and then a man entered the room, whose face also seemed familiar to Margarita. Suddenly she realized who it was. It was Andres, the former technologist from her factory, the one she had chosen to be the father of her child. She woke up, Norma said, turning toward him. A boy, a copy of Demetrio, ran into the room and turned to Norma. Mom, is this Granny going to be okay? Isn't she going to die? She will be fine, dear, Norma nodded. Margarita says just fainted, but now she is okay. So she recognized her. But if this boy, who looked so much like Demetrio, called Norma mommy, then she was dizzy with emotions and unanswered questions. I see you have a lot to ask, Margarita says. Norma grinned, her tone no longer as timid or helpless as it had been 10 years ago. Just one thing, Margarita wheezed. This boy, is he Demetrio's son? Yes, Norma nodded calmly. When you offered me money for an abortion, I left. Then I ran unable to see anything in front of me. I ran out onto the road and almost got hit by a car. Andres was driving. I think you remember him too, she smiled. Margarita was embarrassingly silent. He realized that I was in some kind of trouble, Norma continued. He calmed me down, took me to a cafe, fed me, and asked me what had happened. I didn't hide anything, and then it turned out that he was Demetrio's father, my baby's grandfather. I immediately offered Norma my help, Andres said. I helped her get a place to live. I helped her get a job. I helped her as much as I could. If it hadn't been for Andres, I would have been lost, Norma said with a grateful smile. He introduced me to his children and his wife. So your family knew you had an illegitimate child? Margarita wheezed, turning to Andres. Andres nodded. Yes, one day I made up my mind and told my wife. She understood and forgave me, even wondering why you were so cruel to keep me from seeing my son. Margarita covered her face with trembling hands. I wanted him to be my child, only mine. I wanted to keep him from the world, from all the troubles, but I failed. She burst into tears. Norma nodded. Yes, what happened to Demetrio was terrible. I loved him so much that I never got married, even though I had proposals. Forgive me, girl, please forgive me, Margarita sobbed, and you, Andres, forgive me. I know it's too late, but why do you think it's too late? Andres smiled conciliatingly. The main thing is to understand that you've made mistakes. You've already paid for your mistakes. No one is going to finish you off. Will you let me communicate with my grandson? Margarita asked in a shy, trembling voice. Norma and Andres looked at each other. Why not? Demetrio is a sociable boy. I think he'll make friends with you. Thank you, Margarita murmured. Thank you for giving my grandson the name Demetrio. Norma made her a calming herbal tea and told her to lay in bed until her strength returned. As Margarita was falling asleep, she thought that she would do everything possible to win the love and trust of all these people, Andres, Norma, and Demetrio. Yes, she has made a terrible mistake, and now she is paying for her mistakes. But it seems fate has mercy on her and has given her a chance to start all over again, a chance she will not miss. That's not my son's baby in your belly. A woman left her failed wealthy mother-in-law in tears. The wedding was canceled, but 10 years later.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.